Thank you everyone. Assalamu alaikum. I was asking some friends, what is it that we really want to talk about today? Do you really want to talk about the media? Would you like to talk about what's happening in Pakistan outside the media? Where we are going, where we are headed, where we are? I mean, there are so many issues over here. So, I mean, I'm quite happy to talk about things that are of interest to you. Speaking only to the media may not be so exciting. I'm very happy to talk about the media. So why don't we take a bit of a poll here? What should we talk about? I mean, there's another format. I mean, I don't have to say anything like a pundit. I can just stand here and you can throw your bouncers at me and I can try and answer questions. That way we can have a very wide-ranging discussion. I'm quite used to fielding questions and trying to put things in context. That's one way. The other way is that I can start talking about the media and there's no beginning and there's no end. Tell me, what would you like to talk about? What interests you? What different people here?
Do you have your thoughts about the Pakistani media's role at the moment in Pakistan?
The role of the Pakistani media in terms of what?
In terms of checks on judiciary.
Okay. That's cutting very close to the skin. What else? Okay, that's one thing. The role of the Pakistani media vis-a-vis the judiciary. Yeah?
Start with recent developments and then.
Start with recent developments in which we can also talk about the media.
Maybe your view of where Pakistan is heading. Actually, that is the most crucial. We may not understand the intensity.
The thing is, I don't want to start talking theory. It would be interesting to mix theory with practice in terms of what's happening behind the scenes and what's happening in front of you.
Maybe how the media is contributing to the what you may say the narrowing down of the discourse in Pakistan.
Narrowing down?
The narrowing of the discourse in Pakistan.
So clearly there is a lot of interest in the media. Okay, let me just then give you a bird's eye view of where the media started from and where it is today, and some of its strong points and some of its weaknesses. And I'll try and encapsulate that into 15-20 minutes. And then after that we can have a Q&A for half an hour or an hour, as long as you like. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Until 1988, there was no real media to speak of, because there was no democracy in the country. There was a law called the Press and Publications Ordinance that had been promulgated in 1963 during the AUB era, and that made it impossible to publish a newspaper. You would never get permission to do so, and only those newspapers that had already obtained permissions existed, and then they too were subject to all manner of leverages and pressures from whichever government was in power. And at that time the government had many different ways of putting a lid on the media. 1988, Jawahar goes away, there is an interim government, elections are called, and during the interim government's time, some of us in the media felt that this would be a good time. This was an interim government, elections were on the cards, Benazir was going to win. So we thought we should put pressure on this government to relax the laws of the media. So the first amendment to the media laws came in October of 1988. There was a caretaker government, and a Sindhi landlord was the then information minister, and Sumru, and we prevailed upon him to relax the media laws. By the time Benazir came into power, we had a fairly relaxed, new amended Press and Publications Ordinance, and it became our right to publish rather than to obtain permission from the government. We redrafted the law so that anyone who wanted to publish could do so, and if the government of the day wanted to stop that, then they would have to go and put a lid on it, and we could go to the High Court and stop it. So instead of applying for a license from the government, which the license would never be granted, we changed the law so that we could print to our heart's content. That was the opening of the media. And then, of course, Benazir came to power, and I remember her words when the media began to ask embarrassing questions about the corruptions in the People's Party government. and the incompetence, Benazir closed down one or two newspapers in Karachi. And as she put it, that was the din of democracy. But she was compelled to reopen those newspapers because of media pressure. And the media hasn't looked back since then. Every government during the 90s came and wanted to create codes of conduct and so on and so forth on the media, but we resisted it. Then they said to us, okay, if you're not going to allow us to pass laws to regulate the media, then you should have self-regulatory mechanisms so that your freedom is tempered with a sense of responsibility. And I must tell you that we fought against that too. We did not allow ourselves to be reined in even by our own peers. Something like that tends to happen when you have a pendulum swing from one extreme to the other. Suddenly the gate is taken off from being completely unfree to being completely free. So that's what the situation was. And of course that had its pluses and minuses, but the media remained broadly free. Then in the night, but there was one thing neither Nawaz Sharif nor Benazir did, and that was when television came on the scene. Satellite television came on the scene. Neither Benazir nor Nawaz agreed to give what was called then cross-ownership, meaning those who were already in the print media. The law was that you would not be allowed to set up television channels. The argument given by the politicians, democratic politicians, was that this would lead to monopolies and this would lead to undue influence and power of the media. So the law was that if you are already in print media, you cannot go into electronic media. And for about eight years or so, there was a lot of debate and discussion, but neither Nawaz nor Benazir relented. So the big print guys remained in print, and Pakistan television retained its monopoly over electronic. Then comes along Najam Musharraf. You know, when Najam Musharraf seized power, it's interesting that at that time the Pakistani print media was under attack by Nawaz Sharif. The Jung Group was under particular attack, and then we came under attack, the Friday Times. Both for exposing corruption and high-handedness in Nawaz Sharif's his term. And so when this coup took place, the remarkable thing is that nobody in the media shed any tears for the departure of democracy. This is the incredible thing. The politicians had so personalized the debate and so carried out repressive policies that the media was quite happy to see the back of a democratically elected government by a coup. That was the irony of the situation. And Musharraf received a great press. I think Musharraf suddenly realized that the press was not going to be hostile to him, but an asset to him. Because the press had disliked the politicians. They tried to repress the press. So here was Musharraf, candid, forthright, talking good things at that time, wanting to clean up things. And if you remember his first speech, his 6 or 7 points that he articulated, they were pretty radical and reformist. And a lot of people got taken in and said, hey, this is it. You know, the Ataturk has arrived and so on and so forth. But of course that was not to be. But that's another story. Sticking to the media, Musharraf and the media were in love with each other. The media loved Musharraf because he was candid, forthright, straight, no double speak. He was a soldier. Musharraf loved the media because the media hated Nawaz and Benazir because they'd been corrupt. So there was this great honeymoon, which went on for not one but several years. Musharraf then decided, and I think it's something he regrets deeply now, he said, we should open up. We should forget about cross-ownership. This is a great media. These are good people. We should allow them to set up television channels. And suddenly, the print media was given access to electronic media. And the big guys all applied for licensing and got it. And of course, they loved Musharraf for it. So suddenly, they were becoming more powerful. Their voice was now reaching out to every nook and corner in the country. But you know, the media has its own dialectic. Beyond a point, the media is nobody's media. The media is its own. And that happens with everybody. When you grant them freedom beyond a point, they're not your slaves. No matter even if you're the one who's granted them freedom. And that's exactly what happened The media was the Lalit Musharraf, if you remember, when Musharraf's book was published. It was a runaway bestseller even in Pakistan. Forget about the United States and elsewhere. It was a runaway bestseller in Pakistan, and the media couldn't get enough of Musharraf. They were so much enamored with him. But it was getting boring. The media loves excitement, and without excitement and crossing red lines, there are no ratings, and people tend to switch off. And you need to generate excitement. You need to make news. As somebody used to say very famously, from the media's point of view, when a dog bites a man, that's not news. But when a man bites a dog, that's news. So, create news, ratings, competition, all of these things enter the fray. And General Musharraf made that great mistake of sacking the Chief Justice. And the Chief Justice, in a fit of pique, decided to take him on, and would not be carved down. And suddenly the media found a new hero. And of course there was no looking back, because the media then literally made the Chief Justice into a new hero. And the live day-to-day coverage of the Chief Justice gave the Chief Justice a completely new dimension that he would not have imagined. And thereby hangs the story of a lawyers' movement. There would have been no lawyers' movement if there had not been an electronic media that was now challenging Musharraf and saying, we are going to be a power to reckon with. And the story of the media is that the media has looked back from that point. The media suddenly realized its own power. It had the power to restore a Chief Justice. It had the power to get rid of a military man. It had the power to bring back from exile Benazir Bhutto and Nawaz Sharif. So suddenly the media was intoxicated by its success. And that's where we are today, which means there is no accountability on the media. There is no responsibility, because they think they can't do any wrong. And now they have started taking positions which are political. And they think that they have the right to change governments, and they think they have the right to, in a sense, dictate terms to politicians. And they also think they have a right to set agendas, because that's how powerful they've become. And that's how it's gone to their head. Which is where now we come to this whole question of the accountability of the media. The media, the electronic media. The print media, still a lot of people in their 50s and 60s who are writing for the print media. The old fogies who still got, their columns. They've always had them. But the print media is characterized by younger people, people in their 20s and in their 30s. The electronic media. And now, who are these people? Where are they coming from? And what makes them tick? Most of these people, barring maybe one or two, but most of them are in their 30s and 40s. And most of them were educated or brought up or a part of the generations that followed the Al-Haq's period. And they were all part of an Urdu medium culture, where passion and rage and Islamization and two-nation theory and ideology and anti-Americanism has all been the rage. Because that is the great legacy of Zia. After Zia goes, you have the end of American assistance to Pakistan, you have the rise of anti-Americanism in Pakistan, you have the failure of democracy, but you have the same education system, the system of apartheid, the English medium and the Urdu medium. The English medium is creating semi-liberal people who have an interest in the globe and stakes with, for whom the world is flat. And the Urdu medium, for whom avenues are denied, for whom the world is still round. And they are confined to a particular situation. And their sense of nationalism is far more strong and homespun, shall we say, and imbued with religious fervor than it is of those who've been educated by an English medium system. All other things being equal, of course there are people in both sides who cross over, but nonetheless. This I keep saying that I grew up in a Pakistan which this is not a Pakistan I recognize. And when I talk to some of these young people who are in the electronic media, they can't understand where I'm coming from, and I can't understand where they're coming from, although I know where they're coming from, but I still find it difficult to accept. And but they're so strongly imbued with a sense of Pakistani nationalism which is very different from my sense of Pakistani nationalism. I mean, when I was growing up, people used to ask me, if somebody asked me, who are you? I used to say, I'm Pakistani. Now you ask any of these kids, 50% of them will say, I'm a Muslim. So, it's not a question of pluralism in identity. For them, the primary identity is being a Muslim. For me, the primary identity was nation state, Pakistan, and Muslim, of course, I was. There was never any challenge to it. Now it's as though you want to flaunt the fact that you're a Muslim in search of an identity. And so you're having to put down your other identities. So this is what is happening. This is what I find now amongst young people there. That their sense of anger, outrage, for various reasons, some of them justified, leads them into this path. Where then when they come into the media, then they create these new paradigms, the new ways of seeing, as John Berger would say, new ways of seeing, new ways of explaining things. Which is why a young woman on a particular channel can cross-examine Salman Taseer in such a way that she ends up witch hunting him, and she ends up creating a backlash against Salman Taseer. And when you ask her, why were you doing this sort of cross-examination, and she's saying, I'm just playing the devil's advocate. But you're not playing the devil's advocate. You probably half believe some of the things you're saying. So that is where the Pakistani media is now. Unaccountable, confused, hugely anti-West, believing conspiracy theories, now turning against democracy also, and against politicians. Confused because they don't want the army to come back, but at the same time they are unable to create transitions. They were hoping that the lawyers' movement was the harbinger of a revolution. And at that time, some of us said to them, the lawyers' movement is not going to bring about a revolution. This is a transition. It is not a transformation. And we were accused of being pro-Musharraf and all manner of allegations was leveled against us. Now they turn around, and when I used to say to them, how come you have 30 lawyers showering rose petals on Qadri, and you can't find a single lawyer from amongst the great lawyers movement, including Etazaz Hassan, to defend, to prosecute Qadri? And there's no answers. So that is the state of the Pakistani media. And I think I'd like to leave it over here, so that if there are any specific questions relating to the media, I'd be very happy to answer them. But then, of course, there's so much else that is happening in Pakistan. I'd just like to say that, in theory, the media is supposed to be a pillar of democracy. I have no doubt in my mind that the Pakistani media, by and large, remains a pillar of democracy. There is so much confusion and anarchy and irresponsibility and passion and outrage and a lack of rationality and discourse and debate and logic and knowledge-based discourse that sometimes is quite frightening. The thing is that you and I have all been brought up to see the media as a pillar of the nation state. I would have thought our job was to create transitions for democracy, which is to say, yes, hold people accountable, but don't be unaccountable yourself. Don't destabilize the polity or a so-called democratic polity to such an extent that at the end of the day, the whole democratic experiment is wrapped up. Don't do things like that. And finally, I have been saying time and again, because I have been in the driving seat running 2 newspapers, I've been saying that it's the economy stupid. Without a vibrant economy, there's no democracy. Without a vibrant economy, there are no jobs. And without a vibrant economy, there cannot be a free media. And my colleagues in the media have not understood the meaning of this, which is to say that there has been so much destabilization in Pakistan's economy, primarily because of what the media is doing, that we are limping at 1 or 2%. Almost every media organization has had to downsize. Because obviously at the end of the day, the economy isn't working, there are going to be no ads. If there are going to be no ads, there are going to be no TV programs. And if there are going to be fewer TV programs, well, you have to downsize. Let me tell you that there is hardly an organization, a media organization in Pakistan today, where salaries are being paid on time. Even in the Jangzio group, which is supposed to be the most powerful, full of money, and money is spilling out of their pockets and so on. Even their salaries are delayed by a month. And then there are organs like the organ I used to run at one time, the Daily Times, and that particular group, where people haven't been paid for 6 months, which was one of the reasons why I left, because the management was not paying people on time. And there are over 80 channels in the country, of which maybe there isn't apart from Geo, which may or may not be showing a small profit. All other channels are either breaking even or running at losses. So that's how bad the situation is. And yet, if you turn on a channel, it's going to depress you. And because of the debate, it's all going to be pretty one-sided. And that is not helping matters. It is hurting the economy, it is hurting politics. At the end of the day, it's hurting the media itself. Now, when will a change of course take place? I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that the pendulum will come back. It has to come back. That's the law of nature. When you are at one extreme, then you go to the other extreme, and then you see that it doesn't work. You won't learn from example, you learn from your own experience. So, I have no doubt in my mind that the media will come back. Slowly, sense and common sense will dawn on them that, look, we've been going too far, we've been destabilizing. We ought to be part of a stabilization policy. You can be part of a stabilization policy without necessarily not holding people accountable. You can hold people accountable, and you can still be part of a stable society. Like you see the way that the role the media plays in advanced capitalist countries. They don't destabilize it to the extent that everybody begins to suffer. So there are checks and balances. There are no checks and balances. And the last point I want to make is this, and I tried to make this point in one of my TV shows and I was censored. This was clipped out, and so I'll make it here. There is now a nexus between the judiciary and the media. So to come back to the question that was asked, I'd like to end over there. There is a nexus. There is a blind support of everything the judiciary does by the media. And in return, no one can take the media to the cleaners as long as this judiciary is there, because this judiciary will protect this media. So you have a situation where, right or wrong, one supports the other and is dependent on the other. Now, this is a very complicated business. It means you're distorting legal structures, you're distorting consciousness. Both institutions, which were one time very repressed, are now at a stage where, far from being independent or free, they are something else. They are actually transcending their own boundaries and going into other areas where they have no business going. Again, this is the bad side of the coin. The good side of the coin is that maybe 3 years from now you will invite me with people over here and I'll come back and say the pendulum over there has also come back. So maybe this is the way history moves forward. Today it's looking bad, tomorrow it may, the balance may come back. The only problem that I have is, do we have that sort of time? Do we have that sort of luxury? We are now, the country is facing multiple crises, and frankly these are crises that we've never faced before. Maybe during the Q&A we can talk a little bit about these crises. This is genuinely an existential moment for Pakistan. Those of you who are here and who watch our news, you probably think, yaar, ye kya kar rahe hain, wahi chal raha hai sab kuch. But I tell you, life has become so insecure back home. Not just for the poor, but for the rich also. And the walls are going up, the gates are locking. No one trusts anyone anymore. Everybody's thinking, will this country last? There is no reason why the country shouldn't last. There is no direct threat to the country from the outside. There is no direct conspiracy to undermine and finish off the country. India doesn't have the wherewithal nor the interest in doing so. The Americans are too worried about what might happen in the event of a breakdown of Pakistan or the nuclear weapons and so on and so forth. Everybody has a stake in the country. But the only people who appear not to have a stake in the country are Pakistanis. And we seem to have lost hope. And we are doing everything we can to, unfortunately, hasten the point of no return. Thank you.